The first thing that hit me wasn't the snow, it was the silence. That strange, heavy silence that comes right before your gut tells you something's wrong. My old Ford F-150 ticked and cooled in the driveway, its heat long gone by the time I cut the engine. The sky above Brookside Heights hung heavy with thick gray clouds ready to dump another layer of winter on Pittsburgh. I could hear the faint sounds of laughter and music inside my daughter's house. I couldn't see anyone yet, but then I spotted a shape slumped on the front steps. I squinted. There he was. Ethan, my grandson. 19 years old, smart as a whip and sitting outside like a discarded coat. Just a thin, long-sleeve shirt and jeans. His shoulders curled in tight like he was trying to disappear. His arms hugged his knees. Snowflakes clung to his hair. Jesus, I muttered, yanking the door open. The cold punched me in the face the moment I stepped out. My boots crunched across the icy driveway. Ethan. He flinched when he heard my voice, then looked up. The expression on his face nearly undid me. His lips were bluish, his cheeks blotched red with cold, but his eyes lit up the second he saw me. "Grandpa," he whispered, "I can't go in." I didn't wait. I stripped off my winter coat and wrapped it around him before he could finish. The boy was shaking so hard I felt it through the heavy fabric. "You've been sitting out here like this," I helped him to his feet. He staggered, knees buckling. "For how long?" "Since this morning," he mumbled. I checked my watch. 3:15 in the afternoon. This morning my voice caught. "Ethan, it's 14 degrees. You could have frozen to death." "I know." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm not allowed back inside." "The hell you're not," I said. "Come on, into the truck. Heat's still warm." Inside the cab, I cranked the heater to the max and dug through my emergency kit for an extra blanket. He curled into the passenger seat like he was afraid to take up too much space. I watched his fingers struggle to hold the cup of coffee I handed him. They were white and stiff, barely able to curl. "What happened?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, even though rage buzzed under my skin. "Why were you locked out?" He hesitated, watching the frost melt off the windshield. "I was helping Mom with the turkey," he said softly. "She asked me to check it while she took a shower. I forgot to turn off the timer. The top got burnt." "Burnt turkey. That's what this was about." "It wasn't even ruined," Ethan added quickly. "Just a little dark on top. But Carl lost it. Said I ruined Thanksgiving." I felt my jaw tighten. Said I was an embarrassment. Told me to go sit outside and think about what I'd done. "And your mother?" I asked. She tried to speak up, but he told her to stay out of it. And she did. He looked down at his lap. "She always does." Outside the truck, snow kept falling, blanketing the neighborhood in quiet white. Inside, I sat gripping the steering wheel with both hands like it could keep me from exploding. "You're telling me he's made you sit outside since 11 a.m. He nodded. "For burning the turkey." Another nod. I took a deep breath, let it out slowly. "Has this happened before?" Ethan hesitated. "Then yeah. Sometimes when I mess up, he makes me sleep in the garage, or the basement. Last winter, I forgot to shovel the driveway and I slept in your truck. Christmas Eve. You were visiting." I froze. My truck. The one parked in their driveway. He slept there while I sat inside drinking hot cider with his mother and stepfather, thinking we were having a cozy family holiday. "How long has this been going on?" "Since Mom married him. 3 years." The ache in my chest wasn't from the cold. It was guilt, raw and biting. "I should have known," I whispered. "I tried to tell you," Ethan said, eyes still fixed on the dashboard. "But you always talk to Mom and she..." He didn't finish. I didn't need him to. Memories started flooding in small things I'd brushed off. A bruise last summer, a tired voice over the phone, a comment about earning his way back to the dinner table. "I thought it was teenage drama," I muttered. I let it go. Ethan didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I looked over at him, really looked this time. The hollow cheeks, the flinch when I raised my voice even slightly, the way he sat like he didn't want to exist. This wasn't discipline. This was survival. "We're not doing this anymore," I said, turning the key in the ignition. "You're coming home with me tonight." Ethan's head snapped up. "But Carl, he'll say I stole something. Say you kidnapped me. He always does that when someone stands up to him." "He can try," I said, voice low. "Let me worry about Carl." Ethan stared at me. Hope flickered in his eyes, tangled with fear. "He won't let me go," he whispered. I looked at the house again, warm lights twinkling through the windows, music and laughter leaking out through thick walls. "I'm not asking," I said. I reached for the door handle. "Let's get your things." I parked on the curb a safe distance from their house and killed the engine. Ethan and I had waited in the truck for nearly half an hour before sneaking back to the side door. He knew exactly when Carl would slip into his post-dinner football coma, passed out in the recliner, snoring loud enough to rattle the windows. My daughter Kim would likely be cleaning up in silence, avoiding confrontation. As usual. "You remember where everything is?" I asked. Ethan nodded. "Closet top shelf. Backpack's already packed. Documents are in my desk drawer." We had a 10-minute window, maybe less. "All right. Let's do this," I said. He cracked the passenger door and bolted up the walkway, boots crunching over the frozen path. I waited by the truck engine, off, muscles tense. I hadn't felt this wired since Vietnam. Every second felt like glass under my skin. I watched the door swing open and then shut behind him. Then I waited. 3 minutes passed. Then 5. I started counting breaths. By the time I hit 46, the side door opened again. Ethan stumbled out, lugging a black duffel bag over one shoulder and clutching a brown folder to his chest. His steps were quick, urgent. He didn't look back. I opened the door before he reached me. "Drive," he gasped, leaping into the cab. I did. As we pulled onto the interstate, I finally exhaled. "You get it all?" I asked. He unzipped the duffel. Inside were jeans, a pair of beat-up sneakers, 2 hoodies, and a folder marked personal. No coat, no gloves, no keepsakes. "This was all I had anyway," he said quietly. "Anything important in the folder?" He nodded. "My ID, school paperwork, and," he paused, "evidence." That made me glance over. "Of what?" "Carl's emails," he said, voice low. "And text messages, threats, stuff he sent when Mom wasn't around." He blinked. "You saved all that?" "I didn't know what to do with it," he murmured, "but I knew I had to keep it, just in case." We arrived at my place in Monroeville a little after 5. The sun was already down, and the streetlights threw soft halos onto the snow. My 2-story split level hadn't changed much in 20 years. Same brown siding, same cracked driveway, same porch light I installed in 03, after Kim said she hated coming over in the dark. Ethan stood in the entryway like he wasn't sure he was allowed in. "You hungry?" I asked, hanging up my coat. He hesitated. "A little." "Good. I made chili yesterday. It's better the second day." I handed him a bowl and watched him eat in quiet, slow spoonfuls. Not like a starving kid, but like someone who hadn't felt safe eating in a long time. Like someone waiting for the bowl to be snatched away. He flinched when I opened the fridge to grab a drink. Jesus. After dinner, I gave him the guest room. Clean sheets, electric blanket, and a nightstand with a lamp he could control without asking permission. He stood at the threshold like he didn't believe it. "You're not sending me back tomorrow?" he asked. I shook my head. "You're not going anywhere you don't want to." His mouth opened, then closed. He set his duffel on the bed. "Thanks, Grandpa," he whispered. That night I sat alone in my living room, staring at the folder he'd left on the coffee table. I hadn't asked to see it, but he had placed it there for a reason. So I opened it. The first printout was a text chain. Carl's number. Ethan's replies. "Carl, don't even think about talking back to me. You live under my roof. You play by my rules. Ethan, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to mess up. Carl, you're lucky I don't kick your worthless ass out for good." Another message 2 weeks later. "Carl, you better not breathe a word about last night to your mother, or anyone. Try it, and you'll regret being born." Attached was a photo of a red mark on Ethan's arm. Timestamp February 10th, 2024. Another message. "Carl, get the hell out of my sight. Sleep in the garage again tonight. I don't want to see your face." I read them all. There were 23 messages total, each one worse than the last. Some were short bursts of rage, others were calculated, the kind of psychological needle you stick in and twist. I closed the folder and sat back. I was wrong to ever call that man my son-in-law. I was wrong to stay silent when I suspected something was off, but I wouldn't stay wrong. Not anymore. The next morning I called my lawyer. I hadn't spoken to Deborah in over a year, but she picked up on the second ring. "Frank, been a while." "I need help," I said. "Legal." Family. I told her everything slowly, methodically, and without the shakiness Ethan had shown. I had the folder on my lap and read aloud every message, every date, every threat. She was quiet for a long time afterward. "You want custody?" she asked. "He's 19, I said. "He doesn't need custody. He needs protection. Options." "I can help with that. But Frank, if you want to make it permanent, we'll need to act fast. That man's going to claim parental authority unless we nail him with this first." "I'm not letting Carl within 10 feet of him again," I said. "You might want to document Ethan's statement too, just in case we go beyond family court." Meaning this looks like felony abuse, psychological and physical. And if Ethan is willing to speak, we might have a case. I hung up. Then I walked into the guest room. Ethan was awake, sitting cross-legged on the bed, staring out the frosted window. "You okay?" I asked. He looked over, startled. "Yeah. Want to talk to a lawyer." He blinked. "I love you. Just to tell your side. Nothing scary." He hesitated. "Then yeah. Okay." I nodded. "We're not just surviving anymore, Ethan. We're fighting back." It was early January of 2025 when we stepped into Deborah's office in downtown Monroeville. The snow hadn't let up in weeks, and the city looked like it had been dipped in powdered sugar. Ethan kept his hood up even indoors and stayed close behind me like he was still waiting for someone to yank him back. Deborah gave him a soft smile, then motioned toward the conference table. "No pressure, no tricks, just talk," she said. Ethan knotted his lips tight. He spoke for almost an hour. He told her about the first time Carl shoved him, how it started with discipline and slowly shifted into fear. He mentioned the silent dinners, the long punishments, the nights he was forced to sleep on the cold garage floor just for speaking out of turn. And the most chilling part, his voice never rose. He didn't cry. He just told it like he was reporting the weather. Deborah kept writing. "Do you have any messages or voicemails from your mother?" she asked. Ethan shook his head. "She avoids texting. Carl doesn't like it." "Did she ever witness the abuse?" He hesitated. "Once or twice. But she never said anything. She just turned away." After Ethan left the room, Deborah leaned across the table and looked at me hard. "You're going to need more than just the texts. He's over 18. That means it's not as clean a cut in court." "I know. You said you were a witness once, Frank. Is that in writing?" "No, but I remember it clear as day. Thanksgiving night. Ethan was outside in sub-freezing weather while everyone else was inside. His lips were blue. That kid could have gone into shock." She nodded. "Can you write a formal statement?" "I already have." She smiled. "Then we'll start with a protective injunction. Then we file a no-contact order. If Carl so much as drives past your house, we'll bury him in paperwork." "Good," I said. "I want this airtight." Back home, I sat with Ethan at the kitchen table. We spread everything out on the surface, the texts, the photos, the timeline. I was building what Deborah called a receipts map, but it felt more like preparing for war. I never imagined I'd be spending my retirement organizing evidence to protect my grandson, but here I was color-coding hell. "You think he's going to come looking for me?" Ethan asked. "I don't think." "I know." He nodded, jaw set. "Then let's be ready." A week later, I installed cameras around the house. One at the front door, one by the garage, and 2 more covering the side and backyard. I showed Ethan how to view the live feed on the tablet. He watched it like a hawk, as if Carl might crawl through the hedges at any moment. "I'm sorry you have to do all this," he said. "I'm not. But it's a lot. It's too much." I looked him in the eyes. "You are not too much. What's too much is what they did to you, and what I allowed by staying silent." He didn't respond. But he didn't look away either. That same week, a letter arrived. No stamp. Just slid under the front door in a white envelope. It was Carl's handwriting. "You think you can take what's mine. Keep hiding my boy, old man. You're crossing a line you won't walk back from." Ethan read it once, then handed it to me without a word. I scanned it, then placed it inside a plastic sleeve. "Threatening intimidation," I said. "Hand delivered. That's enough to extend the injunction." "Should we tell Deborah?" "I already took a picture. We'll submit it Monday." Ethan looked exhausted, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Anger. Determination. He was waking up. To keep him distracted, I helped him apply for a spring internship at a local historical museum. He loved old architecture, local archives, anything that had to do with preserving stories. He filled out the form carefully, then asked me to proofread it. Where they ask for a reference, can I put you? He asked. I paused. You sure? He looked at me. You're the only adult who's ever actually shown up for me, so, yeah, I'm sure. I wrote my name in careful print and added my phone number. That moment felt heavier than it should have. On Friday, Deborah called with an update. We filed everything. The injunction's active. The court agreed to the no-contact terms. Carl is now legally barred from approaching you or Ethan for the next 6 months pending review. Is that enough? I asked. For now. But we need to be realistic. Carl isn't stupid. He'll play clean in public, then try to make Ethan look like a liar. We need consistency dates, any slip-ups. He already slipped, I said. He left a thread on my floor. Then let's build a fire with it. That night I found Ethan sitting on the porch swing wrapped in a blanket. It was 22 degrees, but he didn't seem to mind the cold. Can't sleep? I asked. He shrugged. Don't like being the center of drama. You're not. You're the survivor of it. He chuckled softly. That's a weird way to put it. But true. He looked down at the blanket. I keep thinking about when I was a kid, when Mom used to sing to me. Before Carl, before everything. Those memories are yours, I said. No one can take them. Even if she stayed quiet. I nodded, even then, because what she did or didn't do doesn't erase the fact that you deserved better, always. By March, the snow was melting, but tension still blanketed the house. Ethan was slowly becoming more himself. He smiled more, ate full meals. But I could still see the flinch every time the doorbell rang or the phone buzzed. It was a deep-rooted reflex, like his body still hadn't caught up with the safety his mind was trying to accept. Then one morning something changed. I was making coffee when Ethan stormed into the kitchen, his phone clenched in his hand, eyes wide. She tagged me, he said. Who? My mom. She posted pictures from a barbecue, Carl's friends, their kids, everyone smiling like nothing ever happened. She tagged me with a caption, "Wish you were here. Still welcome home anytime." He handed me the phone. I stared at the screen. There it was, his name publicly tagged, like a fishing hook wrapped in poisoned bait. Frank, he said slowly. I think she's trying to get me to come back. I took the phone and turned it off. This isn't about missing you. This is about optics. Carl's controlling the story and she's helping. His jaw tightened. Well, not anymore. That was the day Ethan decided to write his own letter. He didn't post it online. He didn't make a scene. He wrote it on actual paper, neat and deliberate. Dear Mom, I see what you're doing. You want me back so Carl doesn't look bad. But you never protected me, and now you want to pretend like nothing happened. I'm not coming back. Not now. Maybe not ever. You chose him every single time. This time I'm choosing me. Ethan. He folded it, placed it in an envelope, and gave it to me to mail. No return address, he said. Let her wonder where I stand. Later that week, Deborah called. Frank, we've got a problem. Carl's attorney just filed for a private mediation request. He wants to resolve family tension outside of court. It's a tactic. What kind of tactic? If Ethan agrees to the meeting, anything he says can be twisted into reconciliation. It can ruin the case. They're baiting him. Can we ignore it? If we do, it'll look like we're not cooperating. But Ethan has the right to refuse. It's all about how we frame the response. I asked Ethan what he wanted. I don't want to sit across from him. Ever. Then we don't, I told Deborah. She sent a formal reply. Request declined. No mediation. All communication through counsel. Carl's camp didn't like that. 2 days later, my neighbor came knocking. Frank, someone's been parked across the street every night for the past week. Same black SUV tinted windows. Doesn't move for hours. I checked the footage. She was right. Same vehicle parked from 9 p.m. until nearly midnight. Headlights off. No movement. I showed Ethan. He didn't say anything, just stared at the screen. Then he whispered, "That's Carl's car." I called Deborah. We'll report it. Might be nothing, but it might be enough to file a harassment claim. Then we called the police. They did a patrol sweep, took down a report, and suggested we install a motion light and another camera. That night, Ethan sat on the porch again. I joined him, coffee in hand, my hand resting on the old porch rail. He looked over at me. Do you ever regret stepping in? I shook my head. Never. I only regret waiting so long. He looked back out at the street. I don't know how this ends. It ends with you living a life that isn't haunted by him. But he won't stop. Then we won't either. He nodded, but I could tell something inside him was cracking. Not from fear, from realization. The kind of pain that hardens you. A week later, Ethan's museum internship began. He dressed up, shirt-iron tie, slightly crooked, that nervous buzz of first-day energy. I took a photo before he left. "You look like a man with a future," I said. He smiled, trying. He came home glowing. Told me about the archives, the friendly staff, how they even gave him his own desk. It was the first time I'd seen him light up like that. But joy is fragile. The next morning he got an email. Subject: internship inquiry. To whom it may concern. I would like to know your organization's policy on allowing individuals with documented family issues and possible mental instability to access historical archives. I believe background checks may not have been fully conducted. Signed, a concerned citizen. He brought it to me, his hands shaking. "Carl," he whispered, "it has to be him." Deborah confirmed it was untraceable, sent from a masked IP, but it was enough. Enough to fire back. She drafted a formal cease and desist, sent it to Carl's known address with return receipt. Then she filed for an emergency protective order expansion, citing continued harassment through third-party interference. But Ethan didn't cry. He didn't rage. He just stood there in the hallway, silent, holding the email. Then he said, "I'm done being scared." By spring of 2026, the house felt different. Ethan's energy had changed, quieter, focused, not withdrawn, but intentional. He no longer asked me if it was okay to use the kitchen or if I minded him staying up late. He just lived. Like the space finally felt like his, too. One morning, I came downstairs to find him sorting through a stack of folders and paperwork spread across the dining table. "What's all this?" I asked, grabbing coffee. "Applications," he said. "I want to start the transfer process. I want to finish school somewhere that feels like mine." I raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "Yeah. I've got a short list, mostly schools around Philly, history programs, plus it's far enough." Far enough from Carl, from the old neighborhood, from the echo of everything he'd been through. By early May, he was admitted to a university just outside Philadelphia. Not Ivy League, not fancy, but solid, respected. He was thrilled. "I've got a roommate assignment already," he said, waving the email. "Name's Lucas. He's a geology major. Seems chill." We celebrated with takeout and a movie. He talked through his class schedule, asked about budgeting, and showed me a spreadsheet he'd made with estimated living expenses. It was meticulous. "You even included laundry costs," I laughed. "Hey, I'm not showing up to class smelling like regret." Around that time, Deborah called. "Frank, we finally have a trial date." "When?" "October 17th. Family Court, Allegheny County. Carl is pushing for a closed hearing, but I'll fight it. The judge already allowed all prior documentation, including the audio, the letter, and the footage." I sat down. "What does Ethan need to do?" "Stay focused. Keep his records clean. No contact. Let me handle everything." I told Ethan that night. He nodded. "I'll be ready." But I saw something flicker in his eyes, not fear, not anger. Resolve. By July, Ethan had saved nearly $8,000 from a part-time job at the museum and a second job he picked up at a bookstore. He kept every receipt, logged every hour. He even built a binder labeled Personal Autonomy. It had tabs: housing, legal, finances, healthcare, education. One evening, he brought it to the porch. "I want to give this to Deborah. She said documentation helps everything." I flipped through it. The work was incredible. Bank statements, pay stubs, tuition breakdowns, each section laid out like he was building a case for the life he'd rebuilt. "You've turned into a machine," I said. He grinned. "A safe one." Then came the letter. It arrived in a cream-colored envelope with no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, his mother's. Inside was a single page, handwritten. "Ethan, I know things are messy, but I still love you. I don't know how to fix it, but Carl's willing to talk now. He said if you'd meet him halfway, he might drop the case. You don't have to respond. Just think about it. Mom." He read it in silence. Then he folded it neatly and placed it back in the envelope. "I'm not answering," he said. "Do you want me to respond for you?" "No. Let the silence speak." Mid-August, we packed up his things. Books, clothes, a second-hand laptop, 3 framed photos, and the binder. I drove him to Philadelphia. It was a quiet trip. No music, just the rhythm of the road and occasional glances that said more than words could. When we pulled up to his dorm, he exhaled slowly. "This is it. I'm proud of you," I said. He unloaded everything quickly, efficient, like if he slowed down it might hurt. Before I left, he handed me a note. "Frank, you didn't just give me a place to stay. You gave me a map back to myself. I don't say this enough, but I love you. Ethan." I didn't cry until I hit the freeway. In September, Ethan emailed me updates. He loved his classes, especially modern American history. He joined the campus LGBTQ group. Lucas turned out to be great, if a little messy. He even started dating someone named Julian. Quiet, artsy kind. They met at the campus coffee shop. More than anything, Ethan sounded free. That same week, Deborah filed a final pre-trial motion request to include Ethan's financial independence records and proof of sustained separation from Carl. It was granted. The judge wrote, "The petitioner's actions show an established pattern of adult agency and responsible boundary setting." It was the closest thing to legal validation we could have asked for. On the day before the hearing, Ethan came home to Monroeville. We sat on the porch again, same old creaky bench, same cool air. "Are you ready?" I asked. He nodded. This time he said, "I'm not showing up as someone who needs defending. I'm showing up as someone who's already whole." The courtroom was colder than I remembered. October 17, 2026, Family Court, Allegheny County. Deborah stood at the plaintiff's table in a sharp navy blazer. Ethan sat beside her, binder in hand, posture upright, but relaxed. He wore a charcoal sweater, no tie, but clean composed. Carl sat across the aisle, flanked by his new attorney, a younger man with a glossy briefcase and a smug tilt to his chin. Ethan didn't look at Carl once. The judge entered, an older black woman with tired eyes but no tolerance for nonsense. She glanced over the files, then looked up. "We will proceed with testimony from the petitioner." Ethan stood. He didn't speak like a 21-year-old. He spoke like someone who had walked through fire and come out knowing where to place his feet. He described the last 2 years with calm precision, the threat of being forced back into Carl's household, the financial and emotional coercion, the sleepless nights, the jobs, the savings, the move, the classes, the therapy. Then he reached for the binder. He showed pay stubs, tuition invoices, medical records, his lease agreement, a signed letter from his university's dean confirming his good standing. Deborah didn't interrupt once. She just placed supporting documents into the court record as he spoke. Carl's lawyer objected once, overruled. Then came the moment that stopped me cold. Ethan said, "This binder is not a record of what I escaped. It's a record of what I built after." He paused. "I'm not asking to erase anyone. I'm asking to be left alone." The courtroom was silent. Even Carl's lawyer shifted in his seat. The judge asked just one question. "Have you had any direct communication with Mr. Delaney in the past year?" Ethan shook his head. "None." She nodded. "That will be noted." Later, Carl's team tried to submit a letter from Ethan's mother as evidence of possible reconciliation. The judge glanced at it and said irrelevant unless the petitioner consents. He didn't. Carl didn't speak, not once. He looked smaller than I remembered, like someone clinging to something he no longer believed in. A week later, Deborah called. "It's done." "What do you mean?" "Permanently severed. Ethan is legally recognized as autonomous. Carl's motion to reassert guardianship rights has been denied with prejudice." I exhaled. "And his name?" I asked. Judge granted that too. Ethan Joseph Callahan, effective immediately. My hands shook. I read the court summary 3 times. Back in Philly, Ethan updated his student ID and opened a new checking account. He signed the name Ethan Callahan for the first time on an official form. "I kept Joseph as the middle name," he said, "for continuity. But I knew why. It was my middle name." Fall settled in hard that year. The city turned gold and gray. Ethan sent me photos of him and Julian at a pumpkin patch, then another of him holding a mug with the words, "Steady is strong." We talked every Sunday. No scripts, just life. "I've been helping a couple younger students navigate the counseling center," he said one day. "Feels weird being the one giving advice." "You've earned it," I said. In December, Ethan surprised me by coming home for the holidays. He showed up with Julian and a bag full of tamales. I know they're not traditional Irish Christmas food, Ethan joked, but Julian's family has extra. We laughed, and I watched the two of them decorate the mantel, arguing about garland placement like an old married couple. Julian leaned over later and whispered, "He talks about you all the time, you know, like you're a lighthouse." I blinked hard. He's the one who steered. On New Year's Eve, Ethan handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a printed photo, him standing on campus smiling, holding a sign that read, "I made it, and I'm not done." Tucked behind it was a handwritten note. "Frank, you once told me I could build a life with receipts, not just regrets. This is the first chapter. Thank you for showing me how to write it. Love, Ethan." I hung the photo above the fireplace. That winter, the house felt more like home than it had in years. By spring of 2027, the dust had settled. Ethan was thriving in Philadelphia. Deborah was back to full-time work teaching ethics at the local college. I was semi-retired, consulting now and then, but mostly tending my little vegetable patch and feeding the squirrels out back. But then, the emails started again. Not to me. To the university. To the medical board. To Julian's workplace. They weren't overt threats. Just enough to raise eyebrows. An anonymous complaint about Ethan's emotional instability. A question about the legitimacy of his financial aid. A letter suggesting Deborah had coached Ethan to fabricate abuse for legal advantage. It was all the same handwriting, different fonts, new Gmail accounts, but the same venom, the same pattern. Carl wasn't done. He'd lost in court, lost Ethan's name, lost every legal hold, but now he was trying to poison the air around the boy. Quietly, cowardly. Ethan didn't even flinch when I showed him. He looked over the screenshots, then placed them on the table and said, "I want to respond, but not how he wants me to." I nodded. "What are you thinking?" He smiled, tight-lipped. "Receipts. We spent 2 weeks gathering everything. Not to press new charges, Ethan didn't want that. But to create a permanent digital archive. A time-stamped, notarized record of harassment court orders, legal name change therapy sessions, affidavits from witnesses. Ethan had one goal. To make sure if he ever tries to erase what happened, the truth stays louder. In March, he uploaded everything to a private Google Drive folder with restricted view permissions. Then he added one public-facing document, a notarized personal statement, concise and composed. It ended with, "I do not wish to escalate or punish. I only wish to live free from defamation, interference, or sabotage. This record exists solely for transparency and protection. If you are reading this, it is because my safety, emotional or professional, was compromised again. Ethan Callahan, March 2027. We didn't send the link anywhere. We didn't have to. It was a sword in a glass case, visible, real, and untouched unless needed." Then came the real moment of justice. One evening, Ethan received an email. Not anonymous this time. It was from Carl. No subject line, just 2 sentences. "You win. Don't contact me again." Ethan stared at it for a long time. Then he archived the email without replying. "I thought I'd feel triumphant," he admitted. "Do you?" I asked. He shook his head. "I feel clear. That's enough." A week later, Julian's mom invited Ethan for dinner. "She doesn't know the full story," he said, "just that my dad's not in my life." "That's your boundary," I told him. "You don't owe the world a chapter by chapter." He smiled. "Still, it feels good to know the chapters are written and sealed." Back in Pittsburgh, I received a letter from Carl's legal team. A formal declaration of no contest regarding Ethan's estate claims, meaning Ethan would no longer be pursued for any financial entitlements or debts Carl had hinted at during prior hearings. The language was stiff corporate. But the message was simple. Carl had finally officially stopped. I printed the letter and placed it beside Ethan's court binder in my filing cabinet. Then I made a copy and mailed it to him. No note inside. I didn't need one. He'd know what it meant. The final act wasn't a slam of a gavel or a door slammed shut. It was a sigh in an empty room, and a young man walking out, taller, freer, and with his head held higher than ever before. By the holidays of 2027, I had reclaimed a rhythm I didn't know I'd missed. My mornings were quiet coffee on the porch, the newspaper folded in half birds flitting by the feeder. My phone didn't buzz with legal alerts anymore. Ethan hadn't mentioned Carl in months. The silence felt Earned. He came home for Christmas wearing a forest green coat and boots I didn't recognize. He hugged me at the door and said I got a bonus. First big paycheck, I asked, half teasing. He nodded. Julian and I split rent. I'm tutoring undergrads, and the department offered me a stipend for student mentoring next semester. That grin god, it looked like his mother's. At dinner, he passed around napkins and helped me carve the turkey. When Deborah arrived, the three of us played cards like we used to. No tension, no watching the door, no editing our words for safety. Just people, eating, laughing, surviving, and finally living. Later that evening, I found a small box on my bed. No wrapping, just a note. For everything you carried so I didn't have to. Love, E. Inside was a keychain. Silver, simple. Engraved with, Frank, no step in father. I sat on the edge of the bed holding that thing like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Not from grief. From grace. I had tried to be his bridge, but somehow he had become mine. In January 2028, Ethan gave a guest talk at a youth nonprofit. The theme, telling your story on your terms. He didn't name Carl. He didn't dwell on pain. But he did say this. Sometimes survival means setting boundaries so clean they shine. Sometimes healing means telling the truth once clearly and never again. And sometimes the most radical revenge is becoming the kind of adult you needed when you were a kid. He got a standing ovation. He didn't cry. I did. From the back row where no one saw. When we walked to the car, he asked me, "Do you think Carl will ever try again?" I shook my head. He already did. And you didn't even blink. We drove home through the dark, the heater humming and headlights stretching across the quiet Pennsylvania road. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then Ethan leaned back and said almost to himself, "I hope he's okay." I looked over. "You're still good," I told him. He shrugged. "I don't want anything from him. I just don't want to carry the fire anymore." And maybe that's where our story really ends, not in courtrooms or email threads or certified letters. But here, in this car, in the quiet, with my son no longer surviving, but choosing peace. It took years. Not to win, not to prove anything, but to unlearn the weight I'd carried as if it were mine to hold. Raising Ethan wasn't a rescue mission, it was a promise I made to a child who needed safety. And in fulfilling it, I found my own strength, not loud or dramatic, but deliberate, steady, and sharp enough to hold the line. We didn't burn bridges, we built boundaries, we didn't scream, we outlasted. And in the end, quiet justice wasn't about watching Carl fall. It was about making sure Ethan never had to kneel again. Sometimes justice isn't served in a courtroom or shouted from a podium. Sometimes it looks like a grown man handing you a house key and a thank you card. Sometimes it sounds like silence, uninterrupted, undisturbed, and finally, safe. If you've ever stood quietly in the background so someone else could shine, tell me about it. I read every story you share. And if you're still walking your version of this path, know this. You don't have to fight loud to win. You just have to keep walking forward on your terms.